Hey everyone, Vinod here. We have someone here with multiple years of work experience in the defense and the aerospace engineering sector. And this person, after working for quite some time, has been looking at opportunities in terms of further studies, higher studies, and so on. So we're going to discuss a bunch of options for people with a mechanical engineering degree and with 6, 7 years of work experience. So first thing first, right? Let's put it this way. So let's break up this problem into two big blocks. One is studying in India versus studying abroad. Okay, so that's the two big blocks, and I would say that the one of the options which a lot of Indian students look for when it comes to studying in India is why not do something like a master's in data analytics, do a master's in AI, ML, and all that. But what I would always say is that these fields are very newbie fields; they're just emerging. Nobody really has identified how to make an impact in this space. So it's a just emergent space. And what's most important in this space is that if you want to do well, you should be extremely comfortable working in statistics. You should be like the best possible person in the space of statistics, number crunching, uh, numerical data analysis, all this, right? Using different programs, whether it be Python. Python is just an entry level, right? There's just large data sets. You've got to be working with um, lots and lots of data. Like for example, Google released something which involves, I think, a data set with around 30 billion values for different data points. So I'm just saying there's huge data sets around, and you should be very, very comfortable working with data. And the problem with working with data is that most of the data you get is unfiltered data. And by the time you clean the data and get something out of it, it's a big task. It's very difficult, and it's very onerous, very painful to say the least. So the fantastic part about it is that the fun part of it is actually working with data and then finding insights. But the not so great part about it is that for the first 80% of your time, right, you have to clean the data, which is excruciatingly difficult and it's super painful. It's like debugging. If you know, if you worked in software programming, debugging is something nobody likes. Testing is something which nobody likes. But if you're getting into this space of AI, ML, if you want to get into all the data analysis, you've got to be very, very comfortable working with data. And this is something I've repeated in earlier videos, that the number one skill someone has when it comes to all this data analysis is, can you sit in front of a laptop for 3 to 4 hours without getting up from your seat? Forget everything else. If you can do this, you will learn computer science and data analytics in no time. If you cannot sit, I cannot sit in front of a laptop for more than half an hour. So for me, I can never learn coding and data analytics. It's beyond me. But then if you can do this, then anything can happen. Okay. So I think that's point number one. Point number two is that I think it's overrated. Right now, everybody claims to know something in AI and ML. So getting additional degrees doesn't really mean much. So if you're really shooting for expertise in data analytics, I would strongly recommend you to go for a PhD in that space, because that's the only credible signal in the market that you're good with working with data. There's one more option, that you don't even need to do a degree. While you are working, you can also do something which is like going on lead code, practicing all the problems out there. There are a lot of data sets available, lead code, HackerRank, and so on. Just go ahead, practice, solve problems. You'll be a superstar within 1 or 2 years. Okay, so you don't need to necessarily do a degree. You can just go online. There, like computer science, getting a degree is just a very silly thing, because nobody cares about your degrees. All they care about is what skill you have. Can you solve all these complicated problems? So a case study will be given to you saying, okay, this is the problem we have. This is the data set we have. How will you even approach solving this data set? What sort of insights will you drive, right? So you'll have to then talk about every step of the process. What is it you're going to do? How is it you're going to pull up the data points? What analysis are you going to perform? What are the pros and cons of each one of the analysis you perform? So you need to have a sophisticated understanding of all the data, like data structures and algorithms, the different problem-solving techniques. I think that's really what's most important. Your degree is not going to help you. There are lots of very good students in India who have an undergrad degree and were very, very good in coding because they spend a lot of time on HackerRank. They spend a lot of time on a lead code. Those are the people the companies want. They don't care whether you have a master's degree and so on. Like, it's so easy to get a master's degree, especially when you are at IITs, right? Like I'm currently teaching a course in IIT Palakkad. By the way, I was visiting a bunch of IITs a couple of months back. I visited IIT Indore, and something I always felt by visiting IITs is that students are so focused on their classroom assignments and getting good grades that they forget that they have to learn something in the process. Skills are not good. Like everybody's skill is very average. Everybody's so focused on getting a high CGPA, which is a grade point average, right? So they take up easy courses to get a high GPA. So the difficult part of a recruiter is that when I look at a resume and I see someone with, say, a 9 out of 10 from an IIT, I would assume they are good. But when I talk to them, I find that they're not necessarily that good because they only taken very simple courses to get a high grade. Or they go to professors who necessarily give high grades to everyone, right? So what I'm trying to say is that just going to an IIT, just getting a high grade doesn't mean that you are very skilled. I am more bothered about, like, do you really understand the topic in depth? And you don't need to go to IIT, spend a lot of money getting degrees, go to IIMs, spend a lot of money. Okay, so that's one perspective. The third perspective I want to share is that current job market is terrible. It's really bad out there. I have so many students reaching out to me saying, hey, help me find jobs. Can you connect me with somebody? Saying, can you connect me with startups? Can you connect me with big companies and so on? A lot of big companies have stopped recruiting this year. I don't see it changing even next year. So, for example, Cisco, Amazon, Facebook, Google, nobody's hiring this year. And they're not even hiring interns, which means that next year is also going to be impacted. But then you can make a case that, hey, I'm going to do a master's degree. If I join now, I'll graduate 2 years later. Hopefully, the market will improve. I think it's a risk people are taking because if the market doesn't improve, you will just take a lot of debt and loans and you will not have a job at the end of it. Or you will have a very poor paying job at the end of it. I think that's not a good thing. Like at many of the IIMs, I think that the tuition fees is between 30 to 35 lakhs over 2 years. Is it sensible to take such a big loan when you will struggle to find a job of even anything between like 12 to 15 lakhs? It's that's a question worth asking. Don't go by the placement reports. They all say that everybody's getting paid like 25 lakh compensation, 30 lakh compensation. Please don't go by it. It's all highly inflated number. There's a lot of tricks the placement offices use to show a higher number. What I would otherwise recommend is there is something called the IIM Ahmedabad audited placement report. So please search for it online. It's IIM Ahmedabad audited placement reports. IIM Ahmedabad is the only MBA institution in India which shares that information openly, and those are the only reliable data points. So please check it up if you get a chance. They give you a lot of data points about different sectors, how much they pay, how much is the sign-on compensation, how much is the year-end bonus. It is broken up into all this base compensation, bonus, stock compensation, and so on. So it's broken up into different sectors by location. So please look at those data points. I think it'll be extremely helpful. Okay. So the IIM Ahmedabad placement numbers is a much better guide than just reading the placement reports of many of the IIMs or IITs. I think they don't reveal the truth. And second problem is that with the IITs and IIMs, everybody's in a rush to show a higher number. So they do a lot of, I wouldn't say illegal activities, but I would say that that's not the right way. If you want to talk about the truth, you should probably avoid talking about placement numbers. You should talk about, are people finding the jobs they're interested in? I think that's the number one way to do it. Recently, even I heard from many of the IIT placement officers that in a recent IIT placement meeting, they basically all agreed, a lot of placement officers agreed that they will not talk to the media anymore for this year, and they will avoid releasing any numbers to the media. So like I'm just saying that they don't want to increase the pressure on themselves to force people to finding high paying jobs, because most high paying jobs are necessarily in cities which are also very expensive to live in. So if you're living in a place like Bangalore, 1 lakh a month doesn't go a long way. I mean, you're spending close more than 1 lakh a month just to stay alive. So 1 lakh a month is not a big compensation in Bangalore. But then if you're in a place like, let's say in Coimbatore, or if you're in a place like Pune, 1.5 lakhs maybe could be good compensation. Okay, not bad compensation. But in a place like Delhi, Bombay, or in a place like Bangalore, even 2-3 lakhs a month may not be. You may not save anything even after making 3 lakhs a month. Okay, so I'm just saying that it depends on the cost of living, something to look after. So this is with respect to studies in India. I would not I mean, there is an exception, like you can go for a PhD in IIScs or some of the top IITs. But typically, I feel that the Indian ecosystem is still developing. So if you want to get exposed to cutting edge research in, say, AI, ML, all the data sciences, and if you want to be an expert, highly recommend that you go for a PhD. So that's something I always suggest. If a person has an undergrad degree and 6-7 years of work experience, you have all that's required for a PhD program. Don't even think twice. Go ahead and apply because you have fantastic profile. and you definitely fit in. So if, for example, you're targeting a place like South Korea, Japan, there are lots of opportunities because the professors there are doing cutting edge research, and they always want students to join their colleges and universities. So if you know the local language, it's a huge boon, right? You can easily get into any of these places. It's not super competitive. Most Indians don't apply to these places. So it's much easier to get into South Korea, Japan, do a master's degree, get into some of the very big companies. They're all recruiting like crazy. I know, for example, Japan has a lot of tie-ups with Indian schools, especially IIT Hyderabad, and they're desperate for Indian students to fill up the workplace. So if you want to do something like PhD, there's no better place than, say, a place like South Korea or Japan. But you can also target places like Europe. You can also target places like the US, and you don't need to do a master's degree to apply for a PhD. If you have a lot of work experience, like if you have 6 to 7 years of work experience, you can easily get into most of these places very, very easily. Should be a no-brainer. Okay, so I think I've covered this working in India, studying abroad. The other option is probably entrepreneurship, which is where I would want to share a little bit of thoughts. So, looks like you specifically have worked in this defense space, and so on. If you worked in some of the simulation systems and so on. So, I want to give an example of a person I know. He runs a very famous drone company in India. I don't want to name the company, but he's from IIT Bombay. So this person, again, I'm not going to get into details, but faced a lot of problems in doing the undergrad program. And I think he dropped out from the undergrad program for 1 or 2 years from IIT Bombay to set up this company in 2008. He has been working on this technology, drone technology, for close to, I think, 14 years. And the company has just gone IPO. And when I was reading newspaper reports, I think this person owns around $200 million of stock in that company. So he has worked for 14 years in this space and done extremely well in the drone technology. They were the pioneers in drone technology, starting off in 2008. So I feel if anybody wants to be in that sector of simulations, if they want to get into manufacturing, high high precision manufacturing, machining, this is actually right now is actually a fantastic time to be in that space, because if you watch the stock market in India, a lot of Indian companies, local Indian companies, are getting orders from the Indian government to make expensive equipment for the armed forces. So you can now see that there are a bunch of companies whose valuations are soaring, doing extremely well. So if you're willing to, if you want to be an entrepreneur, actually, this is probably a very good space to be in. I'm reminded of my friend who's worked in that drone company, and now he's worth $200 million, far richer than almost anyone in his batch, right? So I'm thinking the same way. If you really want to get into that space of setting up a company in India, getting to high-end manufacturing, probably this is a time. The only problem is that maybe in the beginning it's going to be a little difficult because you don't have enough capital. You cannot buy expensive equipment. But there are also loans available. If you can tie up, if you have some expertise, you can deliver from your end. Maybe that's a space to investigate. If not now, at least in the near future. So that's something I would leave you with in terms of saying that it's easier to set up something in India right now and also cater to the Indian market. The Indian market is booming. I would expect it to touch around $7 to $10 trillion in another 5 6 years, which means that when the market is booming, everyone's earning capacity is going to increase. Everyone is going to buy a lot more. A lot more companies are going to come up. So it's very difficult to be in a country when it's booming so fast. The last time this happened was in South Korea, where I think the country boomed between 1970 to to the year 2000. There was some 20 to 25 years of rapid industrial growth, and this huge conglomerates in China, they're called J-balls. They emerged during that period, right? So if you're passionate about being in India, if you're passionate about being an entrepreneur, I think there's some fantastic opportunities. Okay, so I'm going to close. I'm going to stop my recording, and we can continue from here.